The mirror stood quietly in the back of the antique shop, coated in dust and forgotten by most. It was taller than a man, framed in weathered mahogany carved with twisting vines and tiny roses, their petals chipped and flaking. Eleanor had only wandered in to escape the rain. She didn't even like antiques. But something about the mirror pulled her in. It wasn't just its size or its craftsmanship. It was the faint hum she felt in her chest when she stood before it, as though the glass recognized her. The shopkeeper was an old man with a crooked smile and eyes that had seen too much. He watched her silently as she stood in front of the mirror, then spoke so softly she almost missed it. "That one remembers things." She turned to him. "What do you mean?" He shrugged. "It's been here longer than I have. People look in and see more than just themselves. Sometimes, they see things they forgot. Sometimes, things they haven't done yet." She laughed, unsure if he was joking, but the words stuck with her. On impulse, she bought it, ignoring the pit in her stomach and the way the shopkeeper's smile faded as he rang up the sale. Back in her apartment, Eleanor leaned the mirror against the living room wall. Her reflection stared back at her, pale and wet from the rain, eyes wide with something she couldn't name. For the rest of the night, she avoided looking at it, curling on the couch with a book and pretending it wasn't there. But something shifted the moment she fell asleep. She dreamed of a place she didn't recognize. A room lit with soft, golden light, the air filled with the scent of roses. She stood in front of the same mirror, though her hair was longer, her posture more confident. In the mirror's reflection, a man stood behind her. She couldn't see his face, only the curve of his jaw and the outline of his hand resting on her shoulder. She turned to look at him, but he vanished. The next morning, Eleanor woke up breathless. Her apartment felt wrong, slightly off, as though someone had moved the furniture while she slept. She glanced at the mirror and froze. Her reflection was staring straight ahead, but she hadn't stepped in front of it yet. Her heart pounded as she walked closer. The reflection moved now, mirroring her movements, but something in its eyes remained different. Like it had just been doing something else. She told herself she was imagining things. That it was just stress. Her breakup with Liam had left her frayed, her job was on the rocks, and she hadn't been sleeping well. But the dreams continued. Each night, she found herself in that golden-lit room, her future self growing clearer, more distinct. And each night, the man behind her came closer. During the day, the mirror began to show things. Quick flashes. A child laughing. A woman screaming. A bloodied hand against glass. They were like static on a screen, blink and they vanished. But she saw them. One evening, Eleanor stared into the mirror for hours. She saw herself in a different. Daniel noticed her growing fear. She tried to explain, but he didn't understand. Who would? She told him to leave, to stay away from her. He refused. He loved her. And that love would get him killed. The night came. It wasn't planned. She didn't want to hurt him. But the argument escalated. Just like in the dreams. Just like in the mirror. He backed away, hands raised. She reached for the lamp, tears streaming down her face. She didn't want this. She didn't. The mirror showed her swinging. It showed his skull breaking. But in real life, she froze. Daniel stepped forward, took the lamp from her, and pulled her into his arms. She sobbed against him, the tension in her body breaking like a wave. He held her for a long time. When she opened her eyes, the mirror was blank. For the first time, it reflected only the present. Only now. But as she turned away, something caught her eye. In the far corner of the glass, barely visible, was her own face. Older. Smiling. And behind her, a crib. A child. The mirror remembers. But now, so does she. She hadn't planned on buying anything that day. Clara was only there to browse, maybe lose herself in the dusty nostalgia of the antique shop on Maple Street, a place that smelled of cedar and old secrets. She wandered past brass lamps, porcelain dolls, and stacks of yellowed books with cracked leather spines, her fingers trailing lazily across surfaces that felt like fragments of other people's lives. That's when she saw the mirror. It wasn't even prominently displayed. Tucked into a shadowy corner between a Victorian coat rack and a chipped dresser, the mirror stood nearly as tall as she did, framed in carved mahogany that twisted upward like vines. It wasn't the frame that drew her in, though. It was the glass. The surface shimmered subtly, like water stirred by wind, though the air in the shop was still. And as Clara stepped closer, her reflection didn't match her movement. It lagged, hesitated, almost as if it was thinking. The old shopkeeper noticed her staring. "Beautiful piece, isn't it?" he said, hobbling toward her with the careful gait of someone who had seen too many winters. "French, probably late 1800s. Came in last week. Estate sale." Clara tilted her head. "It's strange." The shopkeeper smiled. "That's one word for it." The price tag read $42, which seemed impossibly low. But something in her gut told her the real cost wasn't printed on the tag. Still, her hand reached for her wallet as if drawn by some unseen magnet. She brought the mirror home that evening. It barely fit into the back of her hatchback, wrapped in a sheet the shopkeeper gave her. She set it against the wall in her hallway, just across from her bedroom. That night, she dreamt of fog-covered streets and flickering gas lamps. A woman in a red cloak ran barefoot through rain, her reflection darting across wet cobblestones, never matching her movement. Clara woke sweating, heart racing, though she couldn't remember why. The first time it happened, she thought she imagined it. She was brushing her hair in front of the mirror before bed. Her reflection blinked, but she hadn't. She froze, staring at the glass, waiting. The image mimicked her perfectly now. No delay. No trick. Maybe she was tired. But then it happened again. The next night, the reflection smiled just a beat too soon. Then a day later, it turned its head slightly to the left while Clara stood still. By the fourth night, she wasn't sleeping. She watched it from the couch in the hallway, wrapped in a blanket with a lamp glowing beside her, determined to catch it in the act. And at 3:12 a.m., the mirror rippled. Not like glass or water, but like memory. Images flickered across its surface. She saw herself. But not as she was now. Younger. A child, crying beneath a willow tree. Then older, in college, arguing with her mother on a phone call she hadn't thought about in years. Then something else, a moment she didn't recognize. She was in an unfamiliar room, standing in front of a man with hollow eyes. She was shouting. He looked frightened. Then it vanished. Clara staggered back, breath shallow. The images were so vivid. She knew they weren't dreams. They were memories. But one didn't belong to her. The mirror, it seemed, remembered things she had forgotten. Or never lived. She started testing it. Holding up objects to see how the reflection responded. Asking questions out loud to no one. The mirror didn't always react. But when it did, it responded not in words, but scenes, glimpses. Echoes. Moments replayed like worn videotape. She stopped inviting people over. How could she explain what was happening? Even when her best friend Jenna dropped by, Clara made excuses to keep her away from the hallway. But Jenna noticed the change. "You're not sleeping. You're pale. What's going on?" "I'm just processing some stuff," Clara muttered. It wasn't a lie. The mirror began showing her more. Not just her memories, but others. Strangers she'd never met. A young boy locked in a closet. A woman sobbing into a white wedding dress stained with something dark. A man digging a hole in a frozen field. It was as if the mirror had absorbed centuries of sorrow, and now it was bleeding them out through her. And then she saw him, the man from the first unknown memory. She was yelling at him again. Only this time, she was holding something. A heavy brass lamp. His eyes widened in terror. She swung. She screamed and stumbled away from the mirror, clutching her mouth with trembling hands. No. That wasn't real. That wasn't her. She had never. But the memory felt real. It smelled real. Her arm ached where she had swung. She checked her apartment's floor. Nothing. No lamp. No blood. But still, the vision haunted her. She scoured the internet for answers. Haunted objects, cursed mirrors, psychometry, anything. She found forums filled with similar stories. One post caught her eye. The mahogany glass. Shows what's been forgotten or hidden. Be careful. It doesn't just remember, it awakens. The user was anonymous. The post was from 5 years ago. The account was deleted. Clara decided to contact the antique shop again. But when she drove back, the shop was gone. In its place was an empty building with boarded windows. A faded for-lease sign hung sideways on the door. She checked her GPS history. The address was right. But the shop no longer existed. She drove home slowly, the mirror's presence like a cold weight on her chest. That night, it showed her something new. A girl. Not Clara. Different face. She was running, panting, eyes wide with fear. Behind her, someone followed. A man. The girl screamed. The vision cut to static. Then Clara saw herself in the mirror again, staring, but this time, her reflection leaned forward and whispered something. She couldn't hear the words. But she saw the lips move. So she replayed the scene again and again. Filmed it with her phone. Slowed it down. Watched in reverse. 4 words. You killed her too. Her legs buckled. She dropped to the floor, gasping. She didn't understand. Who? When? Why? She searched her memory for something, anything. But there was only fog. There were whole chunks of her past she couldn't fully remember. Nights she chalked up to stress. Feelings she dismissed as anxiety. What if they were repressed for a reason? The mirror began showing her only that girl. Every night. Her name was Emily. Clara didn't know how she knew it, she just did. Emily had lived in the same building years ago. Clara found the name in a news article, buried deep online. A missing person. Never found. Her hands shook as she scrolled. Emily Hayworth. 22. Last seen on Maple Street. Clara lived on Maple Street. Her apartment had once belonged to Emily. She confronted the mirror that night. Not with fear, but with fury. She screamed at it, demanded answers. Demanded truth. The mirror responded. It showed her a door, her own apartment door. Then a key. Then Emily, opening the door. Then Clara, following behind her. She began to doubt everything. Her name. Her memories. Her life. Was she Clara? Or was Clara the mask? The mirror refused to say. She tore it from the wall, shoved it into a closet, and locked the door. But the visions didn't stop. Now, every reflective surface whispered. Her phone screen. Her microwave. The puddle on the sidewalk after rain. All of them blinked back memories that might not have been hers. And then one day, the police knocked. They had a warrant. Someone had sent them a tip, anonymous. They found the hollow floorboard beneath her bedroom. And beneath it, the remains. A body. Emily Hayworth. Clara didn't remember burying her. But the mirror did. And when they took her away, she looked one last time at the mirror through the open closet door. Her reflection smiled. And waved. The image of the Her own reflection returned, pale and wide-eyed. She stumbled back, nearly knocking over a chair. The next few nights were filled with insomnia and anxiety. She couldn't shake the vision. Why would the mirror want to go back? What did it mean? Did it matter? On the fourth night, she decided. She wrapped the mirror in a sheet, careful not to look into it too long, and loaded it into the car. She drove back to where the shop had once stood. It was still empty. A for lease sign still hung askew. But she sat in the car, gripping the steering wheel until her knuckles turned white, and whispered, "What do you want me to do?" The rearview mirror flickered. The storefront shimmered. And then, for just a moment, it was there again. The antique shop. Lit warmly. Doors open. Inviting. She grabbed the mirror, carried it awkwardly across the street, and stepped inside. The shopkeeper stood behind the counter. Not younger. Not older. The same as she remembered. Time didn't seem to touch him. "You brought it back," he said simply. "It asked me to." He nodded. "It's ready now." "So are you." She placed the mirror gently where it once stood. The hum in her chest grew louder, a vibration deep in her bones.
Crib
The
in the mirror
shopkeeper haunted her more than any of the visions that came before. It showed her a
Eleanor
life
stood
frozen, her eyes tracing
her
the soft
daughter,
curves of the
grown,
wooden cradle, the
laughing
delicate
in a
blanket
garden.
inside moving slightly
Daniel
as though a
beside her.
breath disturbed it. No blood, there was no baby
No
in her
death.
life. A
There had
quiet,
never
joyful
been.
existence, but the reflection Eleanor felt like was a older, promise, but content, or a warning, peaceful. Daniel noticed
Is
the
this
change.
what could be?
She asked. Her fear had lessened,
It's what will
replaced
be,
by
he
something
said.
softer, quieter. Now that you've returned
A
what
kind
wasn't
of hope.
yours. She
She
didn't
stepped
tell him
back.
about the crib. What happens
Not
to me
yet.
now? But
He
she
smiled.
found herself reaching for him more,
You remember.
memorizing the way his hand
And you
felt in
live.
hers, the way his
The
eyes
mirror
creased
dimmed.
when he smiled. The hum faded. The mirror no longer
The
frightened
glass
her the
was
way
just
it had.
glass
Again. Now,
Eleanor
it was something
left
to
the
be
shop.
understood.
The
weight lifted. But peace is
When she
rarely
turned
permanent.
back,
The building was
the
abandoned
mirror
once
started
more.
showing inconsistencies
But
again.
she remembered now. First, it was
Everything.
minor. The
A
false
curtain in the
lights,
background
that didn't match her
the
room.
forgotten
ones. A clock that
The
ticked
mirrors
backward.
she had
passed through in lifetimes
Then the visions
prior. returned, but different
She didn't
this
need it
time.
anymore.
She saw Somewhere glimpses of
deep in her
herself
heart,
arguing with
she
a
knew the
teenager
mirror
would
a
find
girl
someone
with her
else.
eyes
but a sharper edge.
Someone who needed to remember.
The girl shouted, slammed
Someone
doors,
who had
ran
forgotten
away.
too
much. Eleanor woke
And
up
when it
from those
did,
visions
it would show
drenched
them
in
what they'd
sweat,
lost.
heart-aching as though she'd lived
Because
those
the mirror
moments.
remembers.
Time passed.
Always.
Daniel moved in. Their life settled into a rhythm that felt real and safe. The mirror remained, always there, but less intrusive. Until the day Eleanor found the note. It was tucked behind the mirror, wedged between the wood and wall. Faded paper, curled with age. The handwriting was looping and delicate. This mirror remembers. But it also holds. It keeps what the world cannot. And when its owner forgets, it keeps remembering. There was no signature. No date. But something inside her shifted. She knew the note wasn't meant for someone else. It was for her. Or a version of her she had not yet become. That night, she dreamed again. The girl was back, the teenager. Her daughter. Eleanor knew it instinctively. The girl was crying in the reflection, sobbing into her hands. Behind her, Daniel was lying still on the floor, blood pooling beneath his head. The lamp again. The old scene. But this time Eleanor wasn't the one holding it. The girl was. She woke with a scream, startling Daniel. Her hands trembled as she reached for him, begging him to promise her something vague and desperate. He held her and told her everything would be okay. She wasn't so sure anymore. Days turned into weeks. The mirror grew quiet again. She began to wonder if its energy came in cycles. Like tides. Like memory. But then, one morning, something happened that changed everything. She looked into the mirror and didn't see herself at all. Instead, it showed the shop. The antique store where she first found it. Only it was pristine now, new, bustling, filled with customers. The shopkeeper was there too, younger, straighter. He was helping a customer carry a grandfather clock. Then he looked directly into the mirror. At her. And mouthed the words, "Bring it back." Eleanor gasped. The scene vanished.